yet another problem we're handing off to you, begging you for a solution. Future generations will not forgive us, will not forgive my generation for what we've done to our landscapes and to our environment. It makes no sense for you to be sitting alone in an automobile, choking the atmosphere, trying to get you to speak to me for 20 minutes. It is nonsensical. I don't feel good about it. And it's yet another issue where we're going to have to hope and pray that you're wiser than us. And I think you are. Here's the wisdom right now that all of us need, no matter what our faith. The wisdom is how to talk with somebody with whom you fundamentally disagree. It is not a secret that this is a delicate moment in the history of our country, in the history of our citizenry, i.e. you. And nobody is immune from the evils of polarization, of recrimination, of mutual demonization. I was in a conversation yesterday in a meeting with university faculty in which I described this project I have going to try to bring together people from different political communities to talk across their differences. And this person said, well, why should I talk to somebody who voted for Trump? That's the problem in a nutshell. And I'm sure, in fact, I know there are plenty of Trump voters who would say, why should I speak with somebody who voted for Hillary? Look, I don't have all the answers to those questions. I'm not wise enough. But I would like to offer you a modest user's manual for speaking across our differences. Modest because there's not a lot in it, and also because I don't necessarily know myself how to do all of this. All I know is that we have to do it. The first thing is, we just have to, all of us, acknowledge how segregated we've become politically and ideologically. That's not an opinion, that is a fact. A guy named Bill Bishop wrote a book called The Big Sword a couple years ago. It's a little dated, but it still holds. And basically, what the Big Sword says is, 50 years ago, it was much more likely that you would live next door to somebody that you disagreed with. And it was much more likely you'd have a conversation with somebody that you disagreed with. But what we did, in addition to resegregating ourselves racially and ethnically, which we also did, and which is related, is we segregated ourselves ideologically. So now he's got this really clever illustration. It's a little cute, but it works. If you live in a community with a Whole Foods, there's an 80% chance that in 2012 you voted for Barack Obama. And if you live in a community with Cracker Barrel, there's an 80% chance that you voted for Mitt Romney. I don't know if there's a God, and I don't know what God does, but I don't think God decreed that we would segregate ourselves in those ways. We did that ourselves. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, when you don't speak to people, you don't get the skills in how to do it. Friends, what we're talking about here is not natural. Nobody comes out of the room just going, well, I'm going to listen to everything you say and tolerate it and not kill you, all right, and not demonize you and try to understand you even though I disagree with you. Well, it's probably the opposite. I think everything that psychology has taught us is that the most natural thing is just to say, well, F you, right? I'm right, you're wrong, what's there to talk about? That's probably more natural. That doesn't make it good. In fact, in my book, it makes it quite bad. But here's the problem. You don't get the skills, which are not natural, you've got to develop. But here's the other thing. You end up distorting the facts. Or just cherry-picking the ones that fit your predisposition. We can't have a conversation unless we have a few shared facts. We really can't. But, all right, if we're not talking with each other, we're inevitably going to distort those facts. So the classic problem right now is climate change. Friends, or human beings, have human behavior, like the behavior I exhibited this morning in my 90 minutes getting here, has that contributed to the warming of the earth? It absolutely has. There is no reasonable person, okay, no knowledgeable person who says otherwise. Do we know the degree? We don't. That's not how science works. There's lots of stuff we don't know. So the fact that human beings have contributed to global warming is a fact. Now, what you do with that fact is hugely controversial, and there's no agreement about it. All right? What should the environmental restrictions be on behaviors like mine? Who should pay for those restrictions? What are the global dimensions of this, like the Paris Accord? All that is up for debate. But my point is, you can't even have that debate unless you acknowledge the fact that people are warming the earth, which they are. Let me emphasize, friends, that this distortion, like everything else, is bipartisan. I get very annoyed when I turn on the TV and I see phrases like the Republican war on science. Here's why. There is a war on science. There absolutely is. All right? But it's bipartisan. How many people in Boulder, Colorado, who scoff appropriately at climate change denial also don't vaccinate their children? The answer is a lot. And they're all Democrats. So don't give me this Republican war on science, okay? It's a Republican-Democrat. It's an American war on science, all right? And just as the idea that people are warming the earth is a fact, the idea that vaccines prevent disease rather than foster disease is also a fact, no matter what Jenny McCarthy says. So, what do we do about this? Here's the first thing I recommend. Whenever you can, try to read and watch and listen to media outlets that you don't like. So I'm a Democrat. I have been my whole life. My dad was in the Peace Corps. I was in the Peace Corps. These are straight up Democratic. You know, not everyone in those organizations is Democrat, but most of them are. My father was a colleague of Robert and John F. Kennedy. I come by this extremely well, honestly, all right? And that's precisely why when I go to the gym, I only watch Fox News. Only. If I watch CNN, I will merely see my own biases and predilections confirmed. Oh, yes, I hate Trump also. Boring. Learning nothing. When was the last time you really learned from somebody that you agree with? I mean, really honestly. So, oh yeah, I hate that person too. I like that person too. All right, I hate that song. I like that song. I think that person's hot. I think that person's hot. Whatever. All right? You don't learn that way. You don't challenge yourself. So I am urging you, if you were a Democrat, please watch Fox News. And if you were a Republican, please watch MSNBC. Whenever you can. That will teach you so much more than just, yeah, I hate you too. Whoever it is. All right? The second thing is, as best you can, please try to separate fact and opinion. Starting in 3rd grade, your teachers did that with you, right? They gave you these 2 sentences, and they said, can you identify fact? Can you identify opinion? We can. We are able to do it. It's just our polarized environment that's blinding us, right? It's making all of us distort facts and confuse facts with opinions. So are people changing the climate? Yes, that is a fact. Should we be in the Paris Peace Accord? That's an opinion. That's not a fact. All right? Reasonable people do not disagree about the fact, but they do disagree about the opinion. And you've got to keep those 2 things straight. Third, and this is, all of these relate to each other, and some actually, I hate to be redundant, but they do all that to each other. Third, please avoid name calling. It doesn't make us more human. It makes us less so. And it starts at the top. And here I am going to be really direct. Friends, you are in your schools and your and welcome to vote for Donald Trump. Okay, some of you did, some of your parents did. But I would plead with you, if you want to make this a better country and world, insofar as that man demonizes his opponents and calls them dummies and losers, and most recently sons of bitches, which is the term he used to describe Colin Kaepernick and others, you cannot act like him. You can vote for him, you can agree with his political positions, that's cool. Echoing his demonization of anyone he disagrees with. You can't do that. So look, on the question of Kaepernick and these protests kneeling, reasonable people disagree. I'm absolutely willing, and indeed I would insist on that principle. I'm not saying it's good to protest on NFL fields. I'm not saying it's bad. What I am saying is no matter what your position is, you must not call the other side names in the ways the president has done. That doesn't promote dialogue. That inhibits it. Right? And it's all around. And it is bipartisan. Oh, you're a libtard. You're a faux news person. Blah, blah, blah. Enough already. Enough. The only person I will demonize is somebody who demonizes, and I'll do it every hour. Stop. Just stop. I feel kind of strong right about that. I was at the door one time, sorry. Friends, okay, a fourth item. When you do talk with somebody from the other side, try to use a welcoming idiom rather than a denunciating one. So friends, when you meet somebody who voted for the other team, if your first play is, how could you vote for such an idiot? You might as well not even try. Your very premises inhibit the discussion. So not how could you vote for such an idiot, but, you voted for Hillary and I voted for Trump. Why do you vote for Hillary? Not why do you vote for that blankety blank. Just tell me, we vote for different people. Why do you vote for it? It's the same question, but it's totally different. Right? The vocabulary, the idiom is absolutely critical here. Fifth, if you can, try to find at least one thing you like about the other side. All right? Sometimes this can be difficult, depending on who is on the other side. But I will just give you a very modest example. I was extremely critical and despondent when the president said that the DACA kids, that is the people who came here as children, when they were undocumented and under the Obama administration were allowed to stay for a while. And when he announced that DACA was over and these people were under threat of deportation, I was extremely despondent. I wrote a column criticizing it. But then, when he met with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, he said we have to create a deal to help these people stay. I immediately wrote another column and I said, bravo, Mr. President. All right? Bravo. I will not pull any punches here. I feel that thus far in sum, Trump has been an abhorrent president. And that's precisely why I'm enjoying to find things that aren't abhorrent about him. To find things that I can agree with that he said and done. All right? That's my goal. That's what I want to do. Friends, just a few other things. And I'm going to 10 to 10, 5 to 10? Yeah, okay, excellent. Yeah, that's the part of teaching high school I don't miss. All right, the bells. You're having some great class. They're like, they don't know what these kids up as if, they're robots. Which you're not. All right. Please, even though all this is difficult and emotional, Don't be afraid of emotion. These are emotional issues. I've been giving talks to high schools, and sometimes I hear teachers say, well, we can't really talk about that, John. It's too emotional. And I'm like, darn straight it's emotional. Like, friends, if you're not emotional about what's going on in your country right now, you gotta wake up. All right? Whatever your political perspective is, you gotta wake up. This is a hugely emotional moment. There's no reason for any of us to pretend otherwise. All of these questions about who we are, all right? Who should be here? How we should think about our past, what memorials we should have, how we should protect ourselves from other countries that have nuclear weapons, like we do. And remember, I know not everyone here is American, but I think most of you are from America. There's only one country that's ever used nuclear weapons in battle, right? And it is your country, right? It is the United States. And that gives you, I think, a responsibility to think really deeply and carefully about this moment. Is it emotional? Like, am I emotional about that situation with North Korea? If you're not, that's a problem. Like, get emotional. It's an existential moment, right? It's not like who's going to win the game tonight or who's debuting, right? It's real. As real as it gets. So don't be afraid of that. But at the same time, please don't substitute emotion for argument. Yes, it's emotional. But in these dialogues, all right, you need some shared ground rules. And whoever is most emotional wins doesn't work. Every great human sin has been emotional as well. If you want a device video of those marchers in Charlottesville, of the white supremacists in their Klan and Nazi regalia, you'll see that they're very emotional. I don't feel like you should be wary of emotion, but I also don't think you should substitute it for thinking. The best argument is the one with the most evidence and the most logic, not the one that you feel most strongly about. Don't be afraid of your feelings, all right? But don't make the mistake of substituting them for actual thinking, okay? Because those two things, they are different. Finally, and this is really the reason I'm here and my real message, what we need, because these skills are not natural, is for our educational institutions, from the very earliest years, to start teaching people how to do this. Friends, I am deeply honored to be here. And I yield to nobody in my respect for Joe and Grega and the others who've invited me here to do this. If every school in America did what they are doing, it would be a different America. All right? Please, give Joan and the rest of your teachers an enormous hand. Please. It's a very short book. All right, I can get away with this joke. It's right up there in the great short book series with great Jewish sports heroes. The reason I can get away with that joke is I'm Jewish. All right, there aren't many great Jewish sports heroes. There are a few. Greenberg, yeah. All right, but it's right up there with great Jewish sports heroes. It's a really short book, and you know why? When we actually go and look at what happens in our K-12 schools, the amount of actual discussion of controversial issues is incredibly small. There are a lot of reasons for that. One is that we're just too worried and anxious. And a lot of we teachers, we just rather do. It's like, don't know where that's going. That seems sort of threatening and icky. All right. And again, people get emotional. We don't want that, of course. All right. So, stiff arm. All right. There are lots of other reasons. That's not the only one. Another of them is, you were the sons and daughters of No Child Left Behind, and although this is a private school, right? Most of the schools in this country are public schools, and thanks to No Child Left Behind, and now it's strange offspring, every student succeeds. Our schools have in many places become testing factories. Our schools are actually evaluated based on how well the kids do on standardized tests. You know what? There's no standardized test that answers the question, are you able to reasonably and civilly deliberate with somebody with whom you disagree? There's no test question about that. The test questions are like, what are the 4 causes of the Civil War? Memorize them and give them to me. All right? Give it up. Give me the facts. All right? Give me what happened. And that just doesn't teach the skills you need to live in a democracy. Now, here's the hardest part, friends, and this is the part that nobody really ever tells you. And this is going to get a little dweeby and professorially, and I'm sorry about that, but I can't put it any other way. Zimmerman thinks the kind of discussion that I'm describing and that your teachers have happily encouraged is integral to democracy. That is, you can't be a small d Democrat. I'm not talking about the party, I'm talking about citizen rights in a democracy, unless you know how to do what I'm describing. But here's the hard part, friends. What if it turns out that the demos, that would be the people, i.e. the voters, i.e. the taxpayers, what if it turns out that they don't want it? How then can it actually be democratic? Look at the word, friends, democratic, right? Okay, the first part is demo. That means the people, a government of the people. Zimmerman, following in a long tradition, goes back to people with names like John Dewey, thinks that schools have an integral role to play in a democracy by teaching people how to deliberate. But schools are themselves democratically controlled and constituted. What if it turns out that the voters don't want democratic education as I'm describing it? How then could it be democratic? I think that's a really good question. If you go up to somebody on Broadway or here in Philly on Broad Street and you say, what do you want your schools to do? What do you want your kids' school to do? I don't think their first answer generally is going to be, well, I just heard Jonathan Zimmerman lecture and I think the school should teach people how to deliberate across their differences. I think it'll probably be, well, help them get a job, help them get some skills that they can sell in the marketplace, help them get into college. Maybe, like, teach them to get ready on time in the morning so I can get to work. And look, none of those are unreasonable goals. Those seem to be entirely reasonable goals to me. But I don't know that the goal I want is necessarily a shared one. And friends, that's really why I'm here. Not all of you are voters. Some of you are already. All of you will be. All of you. Every single one. No matter what your job is. Do schools prepare us for the workplace? Of course they do. And all of you can have different jobs. But there is one job that all of you will have. Every single woman and man here. And that's the job of citizen. I would urge you, when you become a citizen, you're already a citizen, when you become a voter, if you're not already, please vote for leaders and educators that will promote the dialogue we need. If you don't, it won't happen. Thank you very much.
class, one of the goals is to try as much as we can to listen to each other and to learn this skill of having this dialogue. So I appreciate your comments here. As a Mennonite school, we have some other rationale for doing this. Jesus in Matthew 18 speaks very directly. If you look at the stories of Jesus, oftentimes Jesus tells parables. He gives us clues about how to live. But when it comes to somebody, as he said, who sins against us, when we have conflict, Jesus' comment is to go directly to that person and to try to show him what's happened and talk about that. And so one of our reasons that we work at conflict by going directly to the person is because Jesus told us to. But it also is a way then to listen to another person's perspective. And I value your desire to create in us a more democratic society, because I think when we listen to each other, that's part of what schools can be. We talk a lot about community here at Mennonite. And one of the things that's important in community is to be truthful. In fact, in my class this morning, we're talking about some practices that we need in community. And one of them is to be truthful to each other. And by being truthful, that is not always easy. It's sometimes quite difficult when somebody disagrees with us. So there are qualities that, as a community, we need to work towards. And so I really value your desire for us to think carefully about conflict and to try to figure out how to do it in a way that I would definitely agree that values the other person rather than demonizes or puts the other person down. That as we talk about conflict resolution, really the conversation cannot happen if you do that. So by listening carefully, those are the skills that we work really towards in this class, and I appreciate that. And we'll have some more if you're able to stay for a few minutes afterwards. I invited my conflict resolution classes to come and just have some more conversation with you about that. So, do you have anything else you need? Okay. So after chapel concludes here, I would like my conflict resolution students plus my period 4 class to come down and move to the center aisle here. And if you were in social issues and you missed class on Monday and Tuesday, please go to your period 4 class rather than coming here, because you probably have things that you need to do there. So, again, thanks for your participation with us today.